Exposed, 7 terrifying childhood traumas that haunted my life. Discover the sinister secrets. The scent of cut grass mixed with impending dread. Every night it grew darker. It wasn't just the absence of light that haunted Sarah, it was the shadows creeping in, tender fingers of fear brushing against her scrunched-up heart. "Sarah, it's time to come out and play," echoed through her mind, a phantasmal invitation from a distant past that shouldn't have resurfaced. Her son Tommy, eyes wide, whispered about shapes flitting past the windows, but Sarah told him it was just his imagination. She wanted to believe that. The digital clock at the end of the hall ticked away, each second a scream in the silence. Dusk cast its chilling veil on their quiet suburban street, where lives intermingled like tangled threads. She walked past neighbors, their smiles carved in stone as they waved, oblivious to the darkness just behind her own front door. Each night Sarah suited up for late shifts, slipping into a scrub top like armor. But the nights never ceased to bleed into worry, each shift edging closer to fears she couldn't name. Memories of her childhood friend, who had morphed from a protector into a predator, danced like phantoms in her mind, igniting a need to shield her son from the scars that had lacerated her own heart. But then came Max. A beacon from her past, his easy laugh brought solace, until that same laugh twisted into something sinister one evening, echoing like a ghost across the living room. He recalled details she had long buried, yet the light in his eyes dimmed with each passing visit, replaced by a gaze that scraped against her nerves. "How's Tommy?" he inquired one night, his words laced with an urgency that made her shiver. She set her jaw. "He's fine," she forced out, hiding the tremor in her voice. The glow of the television flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced across the walls. She brushed it off, blaming old wiring, but the whispers began, barely audible yet persistent enough to pull her from sleep. "Sarah," they hissed, snaking through the bars of her sanity. Nights transformed into a waking nightmare, where every creak of the floorboard sent shudders through her spine. She grabbed a flashlight and scoured the dark, hunting what lay beyond her dunna clutches, but all she found was the echo of her heartbeat pounding like a drum in the silence. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The walls felt like they were closing in. Nina, the nurse from work, casually mentioned a local boy who had gone missing. The statement hung heavy in the air, wrapping around her throat like a vengeful vine. Like a surge of ice, fear clawed at her. Tommy. She needed to protect him, but how could she fight ghosts she couldn't see? A rainstorm brewed outside, wind howling like an angry spirit. She confronted Tommy, desperate. "Have you seen anything strange? Shadows?" He gazed back, eyes breathless, just a child against the tempest. "Mommy, I see them, they're everywhere." The power surged, lights flickering violently, casting a kaleidoscope of shadow upon the walls. And then came the voice, Max's laughter stretching into a twisted grin. "Sarah, you can't hide. I'm right here." As darkness enveloped them, reality blurred. Trust had turned its back, revealing a monster in familiar skin. Time slipped, and so did her grip on sanity. What had she unleashed in her own home? Rain pelted the windows like tiny fists pounding to get in, desperate. Sarah's heart raced, a wild predator trapped in a cage, clanging against her ribs. "Tommy!" she shouted, her voice slicing through the cacophony of the storm. She grabbed his hand, clutching it as though it were a life raft. "We need to move. We can't stay here." Tommy trembled, his small body shrinking into the corner of the living room, eyes darting to the shadows stretching along the walls. "Mommy, I don't want to," he whined. But she couldn't afford to listen. The laughter, twisted and cruel, nipped at her sanity, echoing in her thoughts. It's just us, she whispered, more to herself than to him, each syllable a fragile shield. She turned to face the door, every creak of the house an intruder echoing back the fear she tried to suppress. We'll go to Nina's. She helps people like us. But Tommy shook his head. Mommy, they're not going to let us go. The air thickened with dread. Her mind raced back to the stories she had always brushed off as childish tales, ghosts, monsters living in the walls, waiting for nightfall. The pounding in her head grew louder, a dizzying drumbeat to the dark rhythm of her past. She had banished such thoughts long ago, but now they clawed back, ferocious in their resurgence. Shoo, she urged. It'll be all right. Yet, uncertainty dripped from her words. She felt it in her bones, the tightening around her throat as the shadows swirled in the corners, whispering secrets she was never meant to uncover. She dragged Tommy towards the hallway, urging him forward, lifelines tethered together. Just then, the power flickered again, a strobe light in the encroaching gloom. In that flash, Sarah saw it, Max's face, lurking just outside, his figure distorted, like a funhouse mirror bending the outline of who he used to be. Sarah, he crooned softly, each note a dagger. You're not alone, they want to play too. No. She screamed, instinct overriding all logic. She turned, pulling Tommy toward the kitchen. They had to barricade themselves, to shield any lurking darkness that could shape reality into a sinister playground. The drawers rattled under her frantic fingers, the knives glinting with potential fury. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, compressing the air between them. Sarah. The voices cried in unison, an orchestra of forgotten memories. Images flooded into her mind, the laughter of children playing in the backyard, the innocent games that had turned sour in the twilight years. Was it her guilt speaking? Or something darker? Mommy, it's coming. Tommy's voice broke through the swell of noise, his tiny fingers pointing toward the window just as the curtain billowed inward, as though inviting a guest. Heart racing, panic surged through her because behind those curtains lurked the impossible. She gripped Tommy's shoulders, anchoring him, trying to shield him from the encroaching shadows that twisted and turned like living tendrils. I want to let it take you. She hissed, desperation coloring her voice. But deep down, she wondered how much fight was left in her. In the sudden stillness, the whispers stilled, replaced by a single heartbeat pulsing, one that didn't belong to her. It grew louder, a steady rhythm contradicting the chaos, calling her name in perfect sync. Waiting, and then it hit beyond the deepening gloom, a single figure stepped forward, pushing against the threshold of everything she held dear. It was familiar yet entirely foreign, a ghost of her past that beckoned with a sinister smile. The moment stretched taut, fear wrapping around them like a noose. But it was not the end. In that fraught silence, Sarah knew the worst was yet to come. With every heartbeat, the shadows stirred, heralding a truth she had desperately fought to conceal. What had she truly unleashed? The figure stepped closer, the features sharpening into clarity with every heartbeat. It was her mother, a semblance of the woman she remembered, but twisted, marred by shadows that soaked into her very skin. Sarah, the voice came soft, deceptively sweet, as if candy-coated with memories of long-lost love. I've missed you so much. Stay back. Sarah shouted, the words spilling from her lips like hot coals. Tommy whimpered beside her, his eyes wide, reflecting every flicker of fear that thrummed in the air. Sarah tightened her grip on the closest knife, the cold metal felt reassuring against her clammy skin. Don't you remember the games we used to play? The voice sang, echoing along the walls. We can still play, just like before. The kitchen felt smaller, the shadows curling tighter, squeezing the life from the air. Spoons rattled in their holders. The pots on the stove clanged as if supporting this cruel symphony. A chill brushed against her spine, a whisper of old fears that felt mockingly close to the surface. Mommy? Tommy whimpered again, glancing from her to the figure. Tommy, stay behind me. Sarah positioned herself between her child and the haunting glimpse of the past. Deep down, a nagging seed of doubt festered. Was this really her mother? Or something much worse? Her mind was a swarm, the laughter tipping into screams, growing louder, tenacious. Don't you want to see her again? She's not the only one waiting, the entity beckoned, dark eyes glinting with a predatory hunger. They want to play, too. It's so much fun when we're all together. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat. What do you want? She gasped, breathless, as the memories lunged out of their confines to taunt her moments of abandonment and guilt that whispered of betrayals she once thought she buried. Just come back, sweetheart. We've got so much to make up for. The ghost wove closer, and Sarah could feel the cold emanating from her. Suddenly, the kettle on the stove screeched to life, an anguished wail that mirrored Sarah's heartbeat. Get out! She shouted, lunging toward the apparition, brandishing the knife like a shield, her only defense. But the moment it made contact, the figure dissolved into a flurry of shadows, scattering around the room. Mommy, please! Tommy cried, pressing against her legs, his fear amplifying hers. No! She screamed. We're going to get out. We're fighting. But the shadows converged once again. They thickened, forming shapes just out of reach. Twisted shrieks clawed through the air, morphed from innocent laughter into something grotesque. As she tried to scream, the sounds were swallowed by the cacophony, madness regaining its grip. Why don't you join us? A chorus of voices called, weaving through the already miserable storm outside. It's not just your past that's calling. In that moment, Sarah felt her own heart race, almost sinking with whatever dark thing was lurking just beyond the bounds of her sanity. They all craved release, both the entity and the shadows that wrapped around her memories like leeching vines. Run! She screamed, pulling Tommy toward the back door. But as she reached for the handle, vibrations shimmied through it, like an unseen force holding it shut, anchoring her to a fate she couldn't allow. Mommy! Tommy whimpered again, fear etched into his small features. There it was again, the heartbeat, louder and more insistent. What have you unleashed? It seemed to echo, biting down on Sarah's last threads of hope. But there was no time to think, her instincts kicked in. She turned on her heel, pulling Tommy back toward the living room, her mind racing. They needed a way out. They couldn't stay trapped in this house of horrors, bound to its dreadful nostalgia. Would Nina, if she were still alive, be able to help them? Or was she a victim in this nightmare too? Tommy, we have to go upstairs. She urged. We have to find a way to get to the roof. Maybe we can signal for help. But as they moved, the shadows crawled closer, each embracing a hold tighter than the last. The whispers surged, almost laughing now. Don't you want to play a little longer? A door slammed shut somewhere deep within the house. Mommy! Tommy gasped, clutching her hand. Together, they ascended the staircase, heart pounding against the encroaching darkness, unaware of what waited for them on that rooftop. The darkness was alive and hungry, and it wanted more than just their fear. But as Sarah turned the corner, she caught her breath at the scene unfolding before her. What if the roof holds the key to their salvation or their doom? As they reached the top of the stairs, the air shifted dramatically. It was heavier, laden with a scent Sarah could only define as decay, like the remnants of something long forgotten. The shadows curled at her heels, whispering secrets that sounded alarmingly familiar, each word a taunt, a reminder of the experiences she wished to forget. Mommy, I don't like it up here, Tommy whimpered, his voice shaking like the floor beneath them. The hallway stretched infinitely, dimly lit by flickering bulbs that seemed to dim purposely with every step they took. It was as if the house itself was warning them to turn back. Stay close, Tommy, she urged, trying to steady her breathing. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat. This wasn't a safe space, it never had been. But another part of her, one that knew they couldn't afford to be caught by the shadows, spurred her forward. Desperate for escape, they approached a door at the end of the hall, its frame warped and splintered, as though something had been trying to claw its way out. A soft, sorrowful hum emerged from beyond it, swelling and ebbing, drawing her in like a moth to a flame. Mommy, I don't want to go, Tommy said, clutching her leg tightly. "We have to, Tommy. We need to see what's in there." She pushed the door open with a gentle shove, the creaking sound slicing through the silence like a knife. The room beyond was dimly lit, cluttered with dusty toys, the same toys she played with as a child. They were ghosts of her memories, trapped in this rotting sanctuary. Laughter echoed faintly, threading through the air like a whisper of deceit. In the center of the room stood a small table covered with cracked portraits of family past, the faces blurred, even the smiles twisted into grimaces. An old music box lay open, playing a haunting lullaby that resonated with sadness. Each note felt like a reminder of safety lost, of warmth vanished. "Don't look too long," Tommy squeaked, fear creeping back into his eyes. Sarah's heart thundered, the dark memories rising up inside like a tide threatening to pull her under. She spotted a mirror on the wall, its surface dulled and smeared with fingerprints. For a brief moment, she was captivated. What lay beyond? Was it a glimpse of hope, or a warning of terror? Then she saw it, a figure, hunched and dark, reflecting in the glass behind her. It was no longer the mother she recognized, but a grim specter of dread, the very shadow haunting her dreams. Her breath hitched. The thing was watching and waiting. "Mommy." Tommy tugged at her sleeve, his voice barely above a whisper. "Run." She grabbed Tommy's hand again, yanking him with her as she stumbled backward, the room spinning around them. The music grew louder, drowning out her thoughts, mixing with the laughter of those who had played along with the darkness before. As they darted back into the hallway, the shadows lunged from the corners, creeping closer, their whispers morphing into a deafening chorus. "Play with us, stay forever." The hallway twisted, distorting their path, making it impossible to find their way back down. The door behind them slammed shut, sealing them in with the echoes of their history. Panic surged through Sarah as she pressed forward, her heart racing. "Mommy, it's getting darker," Tommy cried, tears streaming down his cheeks. I know. Sarah felt the bile rise in her throat, terror clawing at her sanity. Ahead, she caught sight of a staircase leading up to the roof. Was that their only way out? The light above winked at her as if promising freedom. But as she moved toward it, the damning whispers grew more forceful, almost pinning her to the ground. What lay down below, beyond the shadows? Was she ready to confront the truth, or would the darkness consume them both before they could escape? "You'll never leave," the voices echoed, drowning her hopes. But in that terrible moment, Sarah made her choice to fight against the haunting din and rise to face whatever awaited them above. With a firm grip on Tommy's trembling hand, she stepped forward, determination coursing through her veins. What would the roof reveal? Would it be salvation or a descent into madness? As they climbed, a shadow loomed behind them, too thick to dismiss, a darkness ready to claim its next victims. Would they make it to the top, or would they succumb to fears rekindled? The truth awaited them, and with it, a resounding question: how far was Sarah willing to go to free herself from the past? The staircase creaked beneath their weight, each step an echoing groan that resonated through the emptiness. Breathless, Sarah gripped the railing, feeling its cold metal grow damp beneath her palm. Tommy followed closely, his small body trembling with every turn. The light above flickered erratically, leaving them in a stuttered dance of light and dark that heightening the urgency of their ascent. "Mommy!" Tommy gasped, his voice cracking. "It's too dark. Just a little further." She forced a smile, though her heart raced with every distorted flicker of the light. The shadows slithered closer, their whispers scraping against her skin. "We'll be okay. I promise." But that promise felt heavier than the air they breathed. As they neared the top, Sarah glimpsed an open door leading to the roof. A bead of sweat trickled down her spine. Was it truly an escape, or a trap disguised as freedom? "Mommy, wait." Tommy clutched at her leg, his wide eyes reflecting panic. The shadows pressed thicker at their backs, a chilling breath brushing against their necks. She glanced backward. The apparition loomed larger, its outline sharp against the dimness, a silhouette formed of every nightmare she'd ever faced. "Now, Tommy." The urgency in her voice broke through her fear, propelling them forward. They burst through the door onto the roof, the open sky above causing her to momentarily forget the horrors that haunted them below, but the euphoria was short-lived. A gust of wind whipped around them, carrying an unsettling chill that bit at Sarah's skin. The view was breathtaking yet shadowed by screams past the skyline that once felt safe now appeared ominous, as if glancing back at her with veiled judgment. "Where do we go?" Tommy whimpered, scanning the roof's expanse for anything that could lead to safety. "Stay close," Sarah urged, scanning the rooftop for some kind of exit. Her pulse quickened as she noticed an old metal ladder leading up to a small access hatch. Fear twisted in her gut. "We might have to get to the other side. Maybe we can get down from there." As they approached the ladder, the shadows crawled closer, the whispers intensifying. "You can't escape," they wailed, the air thickening with dread. Tommy squeezed her hand tightly. "I don't want to climb." "Tommy, we have to." She hoisted him onto the first rung, but the moment she stepped onto the ladder, it jolted beneath her weight, metallic and cold. They were not alone. From the corner of her eye, Sarah saw the dark figure materialize on the rooftop's edge, its face obscured by a veil of night. Heart pounding, she looked up at Tommy, who was straining to see over the edge, terror painted on his small face. "What is it?" he asked, trembling, hope beginning to flicker out in his voice. Suddenly, the echoes returned, the very voices that pursued them grew into a cacophony of taunts. "Join us, play forever, don't look," she shouted, moving them up the ladder with urgency. But as they climbed, the dark figure seemed to elongate, stretching impossibly toward them. At the top, Sarah, desperate to overcome her fear, kicked open the hatch. It swung outward with a bone-shaking screech, but something drew closer, something loomed just below. The rooftop was a dead end. They were trapped. "Climb," she urged, shoving Tommy through the opening. He stumbled onto the flat surface beyond, but when Sarah turned to follow, the figure lunged at her. The cold dread seized her heart, halting her breath. "Stay here forever," it rasped, a hand outstretched, clawing for her. Adrenaline surged, and she sprang through the hatch just as fingers grazed the hem of her shirt. The world beyond blurred, and she hit the ground with a thud, disoriented but free. As the hatch slammed shut behind her, she turned breathless, panting. Whatever was in the shadows on the roof remained. Now what? Tommy's question hung heavy in the air, mixed with remnants of the screams beneath the roof. The space felt confined, oppressive, trapped in a labyrinth without a way to escape. Maybe we're safe here," she murmured, trying to believe it even as doubt sank its claws into her heart. But deep down, as the shadows whispered through the cracks, she knew this was only the beginning of their deeper descent. What awaited them next? Would it be freedom, or the very nightmares they sought to escape? Instantly, the shadows danced again, beckoning her to look deeper, closer. "Mommy, what's that noise?" Tommy shuddered, pointing toward the darkened corner of the space where shadows flickered like flames. Suddenly, a menacing growl filled the air. "Get back!" Sarah screamed. Something was moving fast, closing in on them. She clenched her fists, embodying every ounce of courage she had left. What had surfaced from the depths? Would they face the thing that waited, or would they become mere echoes of the past, voices caught in a game they could never leave? The growl reverberated off the walls, each echo a tightening knot in Sarah's stomach. She could feel the vibrations beneath her feet, a threat looming just out of sight. Tommy clutched her leg, his fingers digging in with fear, and she could see terror painted across his pale face. "Mommy, I can't breathe," he whimpered, eyes wide, darting nervously toward the shadow that loomed ever closer. She looked around, desperately searching for an escape, but the barren room offered no solace, just walls darkened by despair, corners thick with encroaching dread. "Stay close," she managed, though her own voice was barely a whisper amidst the chaos. The shadows flickered, shifting and flickering like restless spirits, alive with the whispers of the past. Why did we come here? Tommy's voice quavered, pulling her back into the moment. I thought we were safe. Me too, she gasped, feeling her heart pound against her chest, urging her to flee. But there was nowhere to go. They were trapped, cornered by the darkness that hungered for them. The growl grew deeper, shaking the very air around them, and something slithered into view from the recesses. A grotesque figure emerged, a malformation of shadows drawing closer, merging and distorting as it moved. It had no defined shape, its form twisting in a dance of horrors meant to unnerve them. Close your eyes, Tommy. She shouted, trying to keep the fear from contaminating her voice. Mommy, I don't want to. Do it now. She shoved him behind her, putting herself between him and the nightmare that had taken form. The creature reeked of decay and despair, an entity birthed from the depths of every childhood fear. As it advanced, the ground quaked, and Sarah's instincts screamed at her to run. We have to find a way out. She yelled, scanning the walls. They were closing in, shrieking with the weight of hopelessness. Suddenly, a flicker of light caught her eye at the far end of the room, a faint glimmer pushing through a crack in the wall. Tommy, over there. Move. She ordered, grabbing his hand and dragging him forward. But as they reached the light, the shadow lunged for them, its jagged maw opening wide, hungry and eager. Go. She screamed, pushing Tommy ahead of her. She could feel the cold breath of the creature behind her, a rancid wind that seemed to steal her breath. It was closing in, riding the pulse of her terror. Tommy stumbled through the crack first and she vaulted after him, squeezing through with a painful crunch. On the other side, they tumbled into what felt like another world, a small, cramped hallway stacked with debris and shadows. Are we safe? Tommy asked, trembling, glancing back at the sliver of light, only to see the creature paused at the entrance, its elongated silhouette waiting, watching. For now, Sarah panted, heart racing. But dread was pooling in her stomach. She knew the darkness only retreated temporarily. Which way? Tommy's voice was small and vulnerable. Sarah scanned their surroundings. The hallway stretched endlessly, the walls lined with doors that seemed to hum with an unnatural energy, whispering to be opened. Each door promised refuge or something far worse. We have to decide quickly. She urged, moving with purpose. What do we do? As she reached for the closest door, a screech echoed down the corridor, a final warning from the creature. They weren't alone anymore. Mommy, please. Tommy cried as she hesitated. The fear in his voice twisted her insides. Okay. This one. She claimed a door, swinging it wide. Inside, an ancient room revealed itself, dim but littered with forgotten memories of childhood. Toys lay strewn across the floor, dusty and broken, a haunting reminder of faded innocence. Is this a playroom? Sarah whispered, dread curling around her thoughts. The shadows gathered at the door, but they weren't just closing in on them, they seemed to swirl into the room, responding to their presence. Tommy stepped inside cautiously. Something feels wrong. Stay by me, Sarah said, stepping in after him. She slammed the door shut just as the creature pushed against it with a furious growl. The wood shuddered beneath the weight of despair. What do we do? Tommy's face was ghostly. I don't know, Sarah admitted, dread pouring through her heart. The walls pulsed, and beneath their feet, the floor vibrated, the shadows seeping beneath the cracks. Suddenly, a distant melody wafted through the air, an eerie lullaby that seemed to beckon them deeper into the room. Mommy, I can hear something, Tommy said, his eyes shining with curiosity despite the fear. Don't listen, it's just a trick. But even as she said it, the melody tugged at her heartstrings. Could the shadows have been lying in wait, weaving a trap of memories? Sarah felt herself tensing, the line between fear and enchantment blurring. Tommy's courage was waning, her resolve bleeding into uncertainty. The sound filled every crevice of the room, pulling them in, luring them toward the unknown. Do we follow it? He looked desperate now, hope flickering like a candle in a storm. As the lullaby crescendoed, Sarah realized the music wasn't just a melody. It felt like a memory nudging against the door of her mind, wanting to be opened. Then the shadows surged at the door behind them, a wave of darkness flooding through, and she knew they had little time left to choose. What awaited them in the depths of the playroom? Would they find solace in forgotten memories, or would the shadows consume them, dragging them into a darker fate? The air thickened, and anticipation crackled like electricity as she faced the growing darkness. "Turn on the light!" Sarah shouted, but the shadows roared back, drowning out her words as the lullaby echoed louder, pulling her in. The shadows rolled and twisted, eager to swallow them whole. The melody rose to a feverish pitch, its notes wrapping around Sarah like icy fingers. It felt personal, like an old friend ready to recount tales of better days. But deep inside, she knew it was a lie. "Mommy!" Tommy's voice broke through her reverie. He was stepping toward the sound, captivated, his little feet whispering against the creaking floor. "I think we should go. It sounds nice." "No. Come back." Panic surged in Sarah's chest, a keening wail that threatened to choke her. She reached for him, desperation clawing at her throat. But her hand brushed against empty air as he wandered deeper into the room. The playroom grew darker, the corners swallowing their light as if it had never existed. The toys scattered on the floor looked alive, their faded expressions inviting yet terrifying. A doll with porcelain skin smiled eerily, its eyes following Tommy as he stepped further away. "Tommy, don't leave me!" Sarah cried, her voice shaking, piercing through the palpable silence. She took a cautious step forward, needing to breach the distance between them before the shadows consumed everything. But something stopped her, an inexplicable heaviness, as if an invisible weight pressed down on her shoulders, urging her to stay. "Mommy!" Tommy stood near the far wall, entranced by an ornate music box with peeling paint and an intricate design that seemed to shift under her gaze. "It's beautiful." "Tommy, don't touch it." The command slipped out, loud and desperate. The shadows flared at the sound, reaching hungrily at her words. They knew the power of the melody. They thrived on her fear. Tommy hesitated, but the lure was too strong. He stretched out his hand, brushing against the box. The moment his fingers made contact, an icy wind blasted through the room. The lullaby transformed into a cacophony of whispers, a chorus of terrified children crying out in pain and despair. "Make it stop!" Sarah screamed, her body jerking forward as she lunged for her son, heart racing, breathing rapid and shallow. The shadows congealed, thickening like smoke, merging together to form grotesque faces, anguished, pleading, and terrified. "Mommy!" Tommy's scream pierced the air, a chilling note that sliced through Sarah's heart. She grabbed him just as the creature's fingers, now stretching into the room, reached for her son. The air crackled and static electricity shivered at her skin. "We have to go, right now." Pulling him back, she hurled herself away from the music box, but the shadows wrapped tighter, pulling at her clothes and clutching at her ankles. "No!" She shouted, the sound reverberating through the playroom. With every ounce of strength, she yanked on Tommy's arm. The music box loomed larger, the whispers tugging at her. "Stay away!" Sarah breathed through clenched teeth, as the melody twisted into a taunting rhyme, playing on her deepest fears. Suddenly, she noticed the closest door to the music box, ajar and pulsing with faint light. An escape. Something inside her flickered, clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, it would lead them to safety. "Tommy, now!" she urged, practically shoving him ahead as they sprinted toward the door. But the shadows roared, their screams joining the melody in a symphony of despair. The weight in the room grew heavier, each step feeling like wading through thick mud. "Mommy!" Tommy half stumbled, half flew, but she pulled him to the threshold, fear creating a sturdy resolve. With a final surge, they burst through the door, the echoes of the playroom still howling behind them. They landed in another dark corridor, this one lined with mirrors that reflected not just their bodies but their deepest fears. Sarah panted, eyes darting. We have to keep moving. But the mirrors echoed back memories' happy smiles, laughter tainted by a darkness growing in the corners of her mind. Each face reflected a moment before life spiraled into chaos and despair, reminding her of her unfulfilled promises. Tommy trembled beside her as if sensing her internal battle. "Mommy, I don't like this place, neither do I, but we can't stop," she whispered, despair slithering back, threatening to engulf her once more. As they moved deeper, the reflections began to distort, showing not what they were, but what they feared to become. Suddenly, another door loomed ahead. But this one had no handle, only a faint, pulsing light behind it. "What if it's worse?" Tommy asked, his voice cracking. "I don't know," she admitted, uncertainty flooding her. Every instinct screamed to retreat, but the shadows had become relentless, drawing closer. "Mommy," Tommy looked up at her, and the weight of his trust broke her. "We have to go in," she said, and with a deep breath, she pushed against the door. It swung open, revealing a bright expanse that felt almost unreal. But at the edge of the light was a chilling darkness, and Sarah sensed it was waiting. "Mommy, can we?" Just before Tommy could finish, they felt a presence behind them, a sinister growl echoing louder than before. "Run!" she shouted as the shadows surged forward, hungry and eager to reclaim them. But as they fled into the blinding light, dread lingered in the back of their minds. What had they just escaped, and what waited for them in this new light? Heart pounding, Sarah realized they weren't free yet, not by a long shot. Where were they heading now? And would the shadows follow them into the blinding unknown? The blinding light enveloped them, dizzying and surreal. It was brighter than anything Sarah had ever seen, cutting through the darkness like a knife. Her heart raced, panic gnawing at her stomach. Was this salvation? Or just another trap? As they stumbled into the expanse, the air shifted. The light flickered, revealing glimpses of their surroundings, a childhood playground, worn and faded like an old photograph. The swings creaked in the breeze, swaying gently as if beckoning them forward. But Sarah noticed the unsettling stillness that suffocated the once joyful atmosphere. No laughter, no shouts. Just silence. "Mommy, it looks weird," Tommy whispered, clutching her hand tightly. The innocence in his voice twisted her gut. He was right. The playground felt wrong. It was perfectly intact but completely lifeless. Something dark fluttered at the edge of her vision, a fleeting shadow that disappeared when she turned her head. She felt it, an echo of the fearful presence that chased them. Was it still behind them, lurking just out of sight? "We have to keep moving," she urged, pulling Tommy along before the shadows remembered their scent. They crossed towards the slide, brightly painted but stained with something darker, a deep, ominous red. It made her stomach churn. What was this place? This wasn't an escape, it was a trap disguised as a memory. Suddenly, she caught sight of a figure on the swings, just out of the light's reach. For a brief second before it melted back into shadows, she saw the outline of a child, swinging back and forth, their head hung low. The air grew dense, static energy building around them like an approaching storm. "Tommy, come here." Sarah's voice shook as she slowly backed away, pulling him closer. "We shouldn't be here." But that voice again, soft and sweet, drifted through the air. "Come play with us." It was hauntingly familiar, an echo from the past. "Mommy, it sounds like," Tommy began, his voice faltering. "Is it my friends?" "No." She clutched him tighter, moving further away from the voice, which grew louder and more insistent. "It's not real, Tommy. We have to leave." The swings creaked again, a sinister rhythm as the unseen presence gained strength, inviting them deeper into the heart of the playground. Sarah could feel the shadows swirling closer, circling like vultures. She glanced to the exit, the door they'd come through fading, overpowered by the chilling screams of forgotten laughter. "We can't let them in. They want you," she shouted, her heart racing. Panic flooded her. Even in this seemingly safe place, danger was everywhere. Suddenly, the voice transformed, seeping resentment into the air. "You abandoned us," it wailed. You left us here to suffer, Mommy. Tommy's eyes widened in terror. They're sad. They're not sad, they're angry. Sarah replied fiercely, fighting the urge to listen. The shadows began to pull at the very essence of the playground, saturating it with a darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. Don't look at them. Don't listen. Squeezing her eyes shut, she willed herself to focus on the light, but it began to flicker once more, fading alongside their hope. The children's once sweet voices morphed into a cacophony of wails, clawing at her sanity. Make them stop. Tommy cried as he clutched her leg. Something broke inside Sarah at the sound of her son's tears. She couldn't allow him to feel this terror, she needed to shield him at all costs. With renewed determination, she hoisted Tommy into her arms and sprinted towards the shadowy depths of the playground, seeking an escape. Then she saw it, an old merry-go-round, the metal rusted and warped. But on it, just beyond the edge of the creeping shadows, sat a single shining key, glinting in the light. If we can reach that, maybe we can unlock the way out. She shouted, hoping against hope. As they darted forward, Sarah felt the shadows reaching out, claws of despair grazing her skin. Hurry! She urged, not daring to look back at the chaos behind her, but as they neared the merry-go-round, a piercing laughter echoed, a triumphant note that shattered the silence. You can't escape us. It cried, sending a chill down her spine. Time seemed to freeze as she reached for the key, her fingers brushing against its cold surface. Mommy! Tommy screamed, and the shadows surged forward, their hunger palpable. In that moment, Sarah realized the depth of their peril. They were not just escaping darkness, something much worse awaited them. How could they defeat an enemy that thrived on their very fears? With the key now clasped in her shaking hand, what would it unlock? And more pressingly, would they even survive long enough to find out? The cold metal of the key sent jolts of uncertainty through her hand as Sarah yanked it off the merry-go-round. The laughter that echoed around them heightened, a cruel mockery of their plight. She could feel the shadows pressing in tighter, pulsating with an aggressive need like hungry creatures stalking their prey. Mommy, what now? Tommy squeezed her arm, his small fingers trembling against her skin. I don't know, baby, she whispered, trying to quell the rising dread in her chest. But we have to find a way out. The playground transformed before them. The once familiar structure twisted, the swing chains rustling like skeletal fingers in the wind. Each passing moment felt like a countdown, the air thickening with malice. The children's voices clawed at her sanity, chanting in a symphony of despair. Play with us. Join us. A shiver ran down her spine, and she forced her feet to move, the laughter trailing behind her as if the shadows had gained a life of their own. Stay close. They dashed toward the farthest edge of the playground. Suddenly, Sarah felt the ground beneath her shift. It became soft and spongy, as if she were stepping onto something wretched. The playground itself seemed to be alive, shifting and undulating in response to their fear. Mommy! Look! Tommy pointed to a cluster of children standing in the shadows at the edge of the jungle gym, their eyes dark and hollow. They stared at Sarah and Tommy, their faces twisted into unrecognizable masks of joy and sorrow. The whispers grew louder, as if the shadows were relaying secrets meant to ensnare her. You brought us here, one child crooned, stepping forward, the others following in a ghostly parade. You never came back. No. You don't understand. Sarah's voice cracked as she backed away, clutching Tommy tighter. Each child's face flickered with recognition, the memories of their laughter entangled with the ghosts of forgotten moments. With desperation surging, she turned to the key still blinking in her palm like a beacon. We have to find a door, something to unlock. Will it make them go away? Tommy's eyes brimmed with fear, mirroring her own. Maybe they darted past the merry-go-round, now covered in creeping vines that twisted upward, constricting like a serpent. Sarah was hyper-aware of the shadows whispering close behind, searching for cracks in her resolve. A large concrete structure loomed before them, an old, long-abandoned playhouse with a door ajar. The key felt heavy, ominous against her palm as she threw a glance back at the children. Some giggled softly, a mixture of grief and delight that chilled her. "Mommy. Maybe we should go back," Tommy pleaded, finding no comfort in the madness. "No. We can't." She pushed him forward, making a split-second decision that would alter everything. They needed to find a way out, a release from the nightmare. With a shaky breath, she stepped through the doorway, dragging Tommy behind her. The instant they crossed the threshold, the air darkened. The laughter vanished, and the once vibrant sunlight guttered to a shadowy twilight. The inside felt wrong, each surface crawling with memories long buried. She fumbled for the key, aiming it at what looked like a lock embedded in the wall. Just as she approached, the door slammed shut behind them, sealing their escape. Shadows flickered across the walls, coiling closer. "You can't hide forever," the voice creaked, low and mocking. "Twisted echoes of the past are always waiting," another whispered, growing louder, suffocating them. Panic surged anew as Sarah fought to steady her breath. "What do you want?" she cried into the darkness. But you wanted to play. The voices crescendoed, twisting into a chorus of nostalgia and despair. Suddenly, a flash of light erupted from the key. And then darkness. In that moment, she realized they weren't just battling shadows, they were battling their own demons. The ground trembled and the walls cracked, revealing deeper shadows lurking just out of sight, each waiting to pounce. She could feel the very fabric of their existence fraying, and the key pulsed in her hand, a heartbeat echoing her own. "Tommy," she breathed, fear clawing at her throat. "What have we unleashed?" And as the shadows moved in closer, a thought pulled at her. The key wasn't just a key, it was a choice. A choice that would seal their fates, or lead them to salvation. What lay beyond the door's lock? Freedom or something far worse? The air crackled as Sarah stood at the threshold, trembling with uncertainty. The darkness behind them was thickening, shadows swaying and whispering sinister secrets that clawed at her resolve. With her heart racing like a wild drum, she turned toward Tommy, who was watching her with wide eyes. Fear, confusion, and an innocent yearning for safety painted every inch of his small body. "Hold my hand," she breathed. "We're going to face this together. No matter what." Tommy swallowed hard but nodded, the weight of their situation settling between them like a heavy blanket. She pressed the key against the wall, feeling the pull of the shadows at her back, and with a deep breath, she turned it. The lock clicked, and in that moment, a blinding light erupted from the keyhole, illuminating the room with a warmth that pushed back the encroaching dark, but the shadows screamed. They hissed and fell back, retreating for just a moment as the door swung open, revealing not freedom, but a swirling mass of colors, memories glimmering in the light, bittersweet and haunting. "Mommy." Tommy's voice rang out soft and confused. "What is happening?" Sarah's heart twisted as she peered into the portal. Images flooded her senses, laughter from the playground, echoes of her mother's voice mingled with the voices of lost children. With every heartbeat, the shadows surged forward, reaching eagerly toward the light. They want us to step in." She gasped, feeling the urge to follow, an insatiable pull towards the warmth. Yet instinct tensed her muscles, forcing her to fight against that urge. "No." She shook her head, raw fear blending with the determination filling her veins. "Those aren't just memories, Tommy. They're traps. They're trying to lure us." "Mommy, I'm scared," Tommy cried, clutching her hand tightly. "Stay close." Panic clawed at her throat. "We need to find a way through, but not there." The shadows loomed larger, the whispers morphing into howls of despair. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. Memories surged as she recalled the final moment she had with her friends before the betrayal, the weight of guilt burying her heart. She missed them but couldn't let it control her. She wouldn't sacrifice Tommy to this darkness. "No." She shouted, fear transforming into defiance. "You don't own us. I'll break whatever cycle you have over us." With every ounce of her strength, she brandished the key toward the swirling light, her fingers pressing tightly against its cool metal. "You may have taken them, but you won't take us." As if sensing her will, the shadows shrieked and surged forward, a dark cyclone of voices pleading and taunting. "Come play, come stay forever," the echoes threatened, but Sarah steeled herself. Then, amidst the chaos, she saw it, the small mirror nestled amid the swirling memories. It reflected not just Tommy's frightened face but her own, a mother, determined and fierce. The determination simmering inside her transformed into conviction. She had to be the guardian of their fate. "Tommy," she said, her voice steady, "we're going to step through that light together. Are you ready? Can we really?" His small voice trembled, but there was a spark of understanding in his eyes. "Yes. We can do this." They stepped forward together, clasping hands tightly, hearts synchronized in courage. The shadows convulsed around them, howling and clawing at the air desperately, but they not only faced the memories but also each other. As they approached the swirling light, Sarah and Tommy took a breath and leapt into it. Inside, colors exploded, warmth washed over them, and time felt suspended. But then darkness rushed to reclaim them, as if the shadows realized they were encroaching on their territory. Sarah's heart squeezed at the thought of failure. "No!" she cried, her voice rising above the cacophony. "I choose love, I choose my son." And with that, the light expanded. It bloomed around them, bright and full, engulfing the swirling shadows, shattering them into particles of smoke. In blinding brilliance, they felt as though they were rising, floating above the chaos. Then the light softened and revealed a familiar landscape, their backyard, the sun bathing it in warmth, the screams of shadows replaced by laughter, real laughter. Children played, darting around freely, uninhibited by fear. Sarah and Tommy landed softly on the grass, the shadows fading like a forgotten nightmare. "Mommy! Look!" Tommy beamed, running toward the swings that creaked gently in the breeze. "They're back." "Yes." She smiled, tears streaming down her face, relief mingling with joy. The darkness that loomed over her heart lifted, each breath feeling light and free. As they embraced amidst the laughter and sunlight, Sarah recognized the ghosts of her past were gone for good. The scars faded but left echoes of strength to carry forward. In that moment, they held hope in their hands, ensconced in the warmth of a new beginning. The shadows had tried to rob them, but together, they found freedom, unearthing the path toward a brighter tomorrow. They turned to each other, hearts aglow. "We did it!" Tommy shouted, innocent joy wrapping around them, the past left behind. Together, Sarah confirmed, her hope renewed, knowing from here on out, they would face whatever haunted them, together. And just as the laughter of children filled the air one last time, a voice whispered, softer now, "Thank you." All shadows held the promise of confronting fear, but in the light of love, they had chosen life. And with the warmth of the sun embracing them, they stepped forward, hand in hand, ready for whatever awaited them next. Now, here's your chance to support the channel. If you want to keep hearing stories like this, you need to subscribe right now. Don't miss a single exclusive tale. Hit that bell icon so you'll never be left in the dark. Smash that like button now to help the algorithm spread the word. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. You know I want to hear what you think. Last but not least, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel the thrill of these stories. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.